Dudes to Dads, brought to you by Dad University, is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads.
Dudes to Dads.
The Dudes to Dads podcast. And Alan, hello again.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen you before.
Yeah.
Oh, 150 other times during this podcast.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
This is episode 151. Wasn't that a very interesting way to put the number out there?
Yeah. We should have 151 rum in front of us or something.
Yes. So I have a little statement here. People have been in world wars.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have been stuck in mine shafts for days on end without food.
Yes.
There's those that have been tortured by enemies.
Where are you going with this?
None of these, I repeat, none of these are as difficult as dealing with a toddler during nighttime.
Okay.
And for those with children, they will completely understand what I'm talking about.
I'm sure.
So today's topic is establishing a nighttime routine. Now, we could have multiple episodes about a baby, toddler, and child and getting them to sleep through the night. There's a ton of stuff about that.
Yeah.
This is the 2 hours or so before your child is going to sleep.
Right.
It's the nighttime routine, the schedule, however you want to call it, of prior to them going to sleep.
Right.
And essentially assisting them in going to sleep.
Yeah.
And you keeping your sanity.
Right.
Both of those.
Yes.
So
key ingredient.
Yeah, absolutely. Establishing a routine is great from the minute the baby's born. You know, there's a feeding schedule, there's sleeping schedule, there's all that stuff.
Right.
And many people do that.
Sure.
Not everybody, but a lot.
Yeah.
It's a very common thing. In the hospital, they suggest it in most cases.
It's like training your child to kind of adjust to this normal schedule of day and night and
totally.
You have to work and all that.
There's life. Yeah, it's life.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we're covering here is really the age when your child is old enough to be doing things on their own.
Mm.
So here's a little side note. Your child is ready to do things on their own probably a lot earlier than you think.
Yeah. Previous episodes, it kind of surprised me, but you would kid throwing away his own diaper type of thing.
Right.
Like that type of thing.
If he can walk.
If they can walk, they can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, so with this routine means so the child needs to be able to identify a picture, ideally know a clock,
mm-hmm.
Or at least know the numbers on the clock. And so they're not going to be, just walking or whatever. I mean, that's
sure.
There are some things for sure that you can establish a routine, but what specifically I'm talking about is essentially making a schedule.
Yeah, right.
And they need to know the time, or they need to be able to look at the time, and they kind of have to have a concept of time.
Punch in and punch out.
Totally. They have to understand and have a concept of time. And that, for some, that may not happen until a little bit older, kindergarten, first grade.
I was going to say preschool.
Once they're starting to be in school, they learn the numbers and they do all that. Now, you can certainly do this beforehand, and you can show pictures, and they can show the order of what happens, and kids will know hey, what comes next and what comes next. But the way I'm going to explain it and what worked for me and our family, that's how I wanted to share. Yeah. So this is something that we implemented and I implemented, and it worked fairly okay, I guess. It's nighttime is really, it's a battle zone, and most parents know this. And the hope here is that you can take some of the advice to make nighttime a little bit easier for both you and your child.
Yeah.
So that the single best piece of advice is just create a schedule. This helps, and this is in quotes, reduce the battles in your house.
Okay.
Or the nighttime battles. Notice I did say reduce, not eliminate.
Sure.
So, step number 1, take inventory. So what that means,
it's very businesslike.
This is for dads,
With checklist, inventory, a SKU number for every toy.
Well, if it was women, I might say, check your emotions. Like, I mean, I don't know. I could be stereotypical. But basically, you're taking inventory. You're writing down all of the things that you need your child to do before their head hits the pillow.
Okay.
So this could be bath, brush teeth, put on pajamas, read a story. I mean, you go through it in your mind. It's not that hard. There's anywhere from 5 to 20, things, depending on what you want to do. Keep it fairly, like, say, walk up the stairs, walk down the stairs. You don't want to do too detailed.
Sure.
But in general, it's put on pajamas, brush your teeth, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And write them down and then put them in chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
So this comes first. This comes first.
Right.
Now, and you're going back all the way until dinner.
Okay.
So what happens after dinner, et cetera,
Gotcha.
You're doing all those things.
Okay.
So once you've done that, you put them in chronological order. You go step number 2. You establish the bedtime that you want them to have.
And what is the good bedtime generally?
Well, so if you're unsure, the earlier the better. That would be my general advice.
Okay.
So as an example, my kids had when they were really little, it was very early, but for the longest time, it was about 7:30.
So maybe an hour after dinner. Is that a good rule?
Well, that's what you have to figure out.
Okay.
So this is what it all happens.
I'm just curious.
So you have to figure out how many things you need to get done and the timing for each of those.
Sure.
I mean, it's complicated, but it's not.
I agree with you.
So as an example, my kids' bedtime, when I did this list, they were in bed, but the lights out were 7:45.
Okay.
We then established, 7:45 was the time. And so we have to work backwards from there, and I'll get to that and sort of what happens. But there's people that their kids don't go to sleep till probably 10, 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So if that works for you, that's fine. I mean, if you're not complaining and you don't have any time for yourself and that works, I mean, that's fine. But it is
one of those kids.
What's
I think I went to bed at 9.
Yeah. It depends on how old, but for younger kids, I mean, it's really recommended that they go to sleep early.
Sure.
I mean, when our kids were really young, I remember it was shown to go to sleep at 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I was like, wow, I mean, that's like dinner time, or for some, it's not even dinner time.
Right. Yet. Yeah, for sure.
So of course you have to adapt this to your schedules and whatever works for your family.
Yeah,
but I'm just telling you what I did, and this has worked for me.
Okay.
It's my caveat before I get a bunch of hate mail.
Right.
How do you do this?
Don't write in.
Actually, you can. That's controversial. Comments work. And on YouTube, it helps. You actually get better rankings from people not liking you.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that hasn't happened yet,
right.
But they will. As you get more popular, more people dislike
More people hate on you.
Yeah, or they like to write comments. I welcome it. Help me with that algorithm. So anyways, you want to establish the bedtime that you want to have. And like I said, if you want to go late, that's fine. But so my kids had they had 7:30 for a long time, but for the purpose of the schedule I did, they did 7:45. And then you go to step number 3, which is work backwards with the realistic time slots.
Yes.
So you go through in order and you say, hey, okay, they have a 7:30 bedtime, and these things need to get done. So for example, I gave the example here. I wrote, if it's 8 o'clock, let's say that they want to go to bed, they probably have to be in bed by 7:30, 7:40. You know how long it probably takes them to fall asleep, or if you're going to read a book, or whatever. And then they have to brush their teeth by 7:20. And and you literally go down 5-10 minutes, whatever it is, and write that down. Mm-hmm. And so what happens then, you get to step number 4, is that dinner time gets established.
Yes.
Based on how much time that's going to take.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To do that.
Right.
You can only fit so much time. You either have to have, we're going to have dinner at this time, and then whatever amount of time you need to get the rest of the stuff done, and that's what time they fall asleep, or you're going to have to work backwards the other way. There's only 2 ways to do it.
Right. But
that's what happened for us. We say, okay, we kind of figured it out. Well, how much time do we want to have? What's the dinner time? And for us, dinner time, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock's a great dinner time. That's, I mean, and I say that probably because
it's very early for some, though.
But it is, I know. And even it's early for me now, but before, I think 6 o'clock's kind of the established. It's in most cases, in most seasons, the sun's going down and or about to go down.
The problem is if dinner goes off is not on time,
then your schedule's
on time. Yeah. So you've got to figure that out. Now, you then get your dinner time's established. That was step number 4, and then you get to number 5. So you've established the dinner time. You've got all your times written. You print out multiple copies and laminate them. I have a laminating machine. I love it. It's just so for me, I put copies in each of my children's rooms, as well as our kitchen, because that's like the sort of central meeting place.
Yeah.
And when we first started, the reason we laminated it, actually, the whole main reason was I wanted them to be able to actually physically check off.
Oh, right.
That they did something, because they just were so into like placing things and checking things and writing things. When they're that little, that they really like that.
They like that.
They like to hold the pen and mark it and whatever.
When you're older, it becomes time tracking.
It's a waste. It's a waste of your energy. So that just helped them. They enjoyed that part of it. And I think it's just in general, the schedule becomes the best way to establish a routine. But having said that, it's never perfect.
Sure.
It's just don't expect that it's going to always be perfect.
Yeah.
And you can't go crazy when the schedule is off. Note to self.
Exactly.
No, I loosened up a little.
Yeah.
Right, honey? No. So here's some tips, though, that I thought of also that I wish somebody would have told me.
Yeah.
Nighttime is hard. And as a parent, you're tired, you're hangry, however it is when you get home. And oftentimes you want to do your own stuff, whatever that may be. Like for me, sometimes that might be doing some of this stuff, like scripting a video or, working on a website or something.
Sure.
Or others want to watch TV or work on music or whatever it is that you want to get to as a parent.
Yeah.
Exercise, something. And you can't get to it until your kids are asleep.
Right.
That often happens.
Sure.
Or you just want alone time.
Yeah, just to decompress.
Just, hey, I want to have an adult conversation.
Yeah.
Right. That can happen too.
Yeah.
So that's one tip is just be prepared that, you're going to be tired. And so as a parent, it's nice to then at least have the schedule. And I will say what's also nice is that you can point to the schedule and blame it on the schedule.
Sure.
So what happens? Hey, what's going on at 7:15?
Yeah,
7:15 says that we're supposed to be doing.
The rules say clearly 7:15 we need to be brushing teeth.
Correct. So you can definitely blame it on that.
Yeah.
It's not your problem. It's the sign's problem.
That's funny. It's like my old bartender credo. It's like this. I blame it on the house when if something goes terribly wrong, or you want to kick them out or something. Hey man, I can't give you another drink. I'd personally give you. I
totally would.
But the house, they get mad when I do that. Okay.
So does the law.
Yeah. The law says you will die.
So the other part is have your child take part in creating the schedule. So allow them to help establish the times so that, they have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
They actually, you said it was 7:15 was a good time for you to brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Is that not the case? And you can do that. Another important tip, you have to be on the same page with your spouse. So in other words, if you are a routine person and your spouse is not, and it's not working and or vice versa, you just don't care to have a routine and your spouse really does, that can be a problem. And it's not good where, let's say you trade off days where one's in charge and the other one's not. And like, hey, on mom days, there's a schedule. On dad days, there's not.
Yeah, no.
Although that, hey, if that's what works for your family, but I could imagine kids thrive on routine. They just do.
Yeah.
That's just what happens.
I would imagine it would be difficult if someone had a job, if you both work and one person had a job that was kind of sporadic in terms of scheduling, like a wait staff or bartender. Or
that's why I said this worked for us.
Yeah.
There's going to be,
you both have 9 to 5ers.
No, especially as the kids get older, they then have sports.
Right.
They then have, or there's other things.
Activities. And
No, for sure. I mean, your work schedule change. This is a scenario in which we had 9 to 5s. 8 to 6s or whatever.
Right,
kids had to have a little bit of a schedule. Like we were able to do that. Also important for us is like we ate dinner together. Some people don't have that opportunity. So it's just, you've got to make it work for yourself. But this is what worked for us. So I did say then consider being a little bit more flexible on the weekend, but not too flexible. In other words, it doesn't go from routine to completely there's no routine
Chaos.
at all. Yeah,
right.
Like there's no reason for them to
maybe able to stay up a little bit later, so the routine just push back.
Yeah, I mean, I think an hour or so.
Yeah,
you can
watch a movie together or something.
Yeah, and you can have a weekend time that if there's normally 7:30, they go to bed at 8:39 or something like that. But you want to be careful not to swing too hard because the kid is still going to get tired, and if they're like our children, it doesn't matter what time they go to bed, they still get up at the same time. Right. I don't know, if it's the sun or whatever, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So that is something you want to consider. The winding down, that's in quotes, is really important. So, this is just a tip for kind of the reason of giving a little bit of time prior to like brushing teeth, but whatever. So if that is laying down with you and snuggling, or if it's reading, or if it's, something quiet and calm is really important. So playing games of any kind, and I remember now, like, I used to, once in a while, we'd play like, instead of reading, we'd play like some sort of like alphabet board game or something like that.
Or cards.
The problem with that, now looking back and also hearing what experts say, is that it's stimulating their mind. It's not allowing them necessarily to unwind and relax, whereas reading has a tendency to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
When they're playing a game, or especially electronics, actually looking at the screen is not good for you before you go to sleep. That's actually a proven scientific thing, whether it's adults or kids. Right. Looking at a screen before you go to sleep is not good.
Right.
So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do anything that's going to hinder them from going to sleep and having a good night's sleep. The other thing is too, you're going to want to give them warnings on the time. So that's just the nature of what we do. Yeah. So
you've mentioned this previously in other shows where you would kind of like, all right, 5 minutes or 10-minute wrap up or whatever.
And that helps. And what you want to do here is ask them questions instead of telling them to. So maybe like, hey, what comes after your pajamas? Yeah. And this is what happens when they're really young. It's like, this is just, you're going to have to do this. Yeah. And here's the other thing is have the expectation that it's going to take you about 1,000 days. No joke. 3 years, 1,000 days.
Okay.
Before they get it.
Yeah.
I mean, they might get it once in a while.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be. And the thing is, kids appreciate the consistency.
Sure.
So for some adults, like they don't maybe like the routine. Adults don't want to do a routine, and if that works for you, then great. The difficulty is kids thrive on routine. Yeah. They enjoy the routine. And so, they watch the same movie 500 times or they read the same bedtime story 1,000 times. You're like, really? We're going to read that again. We just read that 6 nights in a row. They want to read it again.
Yeah. That's why I want you to read it again.
That's what happens. So, so the whole overarching thing with this is, you just have to understand what works for your family, what works for you, establish those times, make a schedule, and you have to stick to it.
Yeah.
You really have to be consistent. It's something that, it's not easy. You don't want to go nuts when the schedule doesn't work. Try it again the next day and we'll make sure that the schedule works. But night times are difficult.
Yeah.
I found them difficult. And of course, because I was tired, I had stuff I needed to do, and I felt like my time was so limited.
Yes.
And it was battling with the fact of like spending the time with the children.
Yes.
Like I want to spend the time with the children, but I also want to do this and I need to get this done.
Right.
There's a list of 4 or 5 things I need to get done, whether it's something around the house, whether it's just hanging out with my wife, like whatever. There's things that you want to do, and selfishly, you want to do them and you don't get to.
For sure. Yeah, exactly.
You're not the priority.
Right. Yeah. So new paradigm shift called, you're not doing that right now. But it's interesting though, because I think the scheduling actually does help kind of create something you carve out, because, I know for me, I would tend to go off the deep end and be kind of self-centered in terms of my own personal space. So to have a routine does carve out that time. And I think that it makes me more accountable to the situation. If we do this every single day, then I'm like, all right, then I don't think of it as I have to do it. It's like, this is what I get to do during that period of time.
Right.
And then I can work my other stuff around that. So after 8 o'clock, I can go nuts.
Yeah. The problem is when after 8 o'clock, you're still dealing with trying to get them to sleep.
Right.
So that's where the difficulty is.
Sure.
Is where you have the established 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock. They're not in bed. They haven't even taken a bath yet. And you're like, why? This isn't going to, you're thinking to yourself, this is going until 8:45, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Now I'm behind.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
It just happens. And that's what happens. And so, you want to establish that routine, and it's not an easy thing to do. So,
yeah.
I wish everybody the best with that. If you guys have any ideas about, maybe what's worked for you, or even some questions about routines and what you should do, Alan, what can they do to reach out to us?
They can email us, podcast@dudesToDads.com. Get us up on Twitter @DudesToDads, Facebook, DudesToDads.com, and also Dad University is on Facebook as well. YouTube. Dudes to Dads is there, as well as Dad University. A lot of great info and tips and stuff there. And then please go to iTunes and Stitcher, and any other podcatcher that we're on. I believe we're on Google Play. Get on those channels, leave some reviews, leave some comments, and subscribe to those networks there. So we really appreciate that. It helps perpetuate the show.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Do you have a nighttime and morning routine?
No. This is when I have kids, I'm going to have to go back to this episode and play it over. So
there's your morning has to be somewhat of a morning routine, right?
Yeah, get up. Yeah.
Well, guess what? Next week, we're talking about a morning routine.
Boom,
there you go. So you will be able to take some pointers from that.
I think I will.
All right. Well, Alan, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time.
See you next time.